The barn door creaked, and my heart stopped. I was 22, standing in the middle of nowhere, Vermont, with a woman who'd known me since I was in diapers. And yet, when she turned to me, her eyes weren't those of my mom's old friend. They were something else entirely. I'm Riley Carter, a college dropout still figuring out who I am, stuck back in my hometown of Willow Creek after a failed stint in Boston. My mom, a high school art teacher, had always been my anchor. But this summer, she was distracted, planning her big move to Seattle with her new boyfriend. That left me alone in our creaky old farmhouse, sorting through my failures and a pile of unpacked boxes. Enter Lena Hawthorne, my mom's best friend from college, who rolled into town like a storm I didn't see coming. At 38, Lena was everything I wasn't. Bold, self-assured, with a laugh that could light up a room and a past she never talked about. She'd moved to Willow Creek a month ago, renting a small cabin on the edge of the McAllister farm, and Mom insisted I show her around. "She's family, Riley," Mom had said, but family didn't make my pulse race like this. That afternoon, Lena had called me over to the farm, saying she needed help with something in the barn. I didn't think twice. Lena was always fixing things, hauling hay, or tinkering with the old tractor. But when I stepped inside, the air felt different. The barn smelled of hay and cedar, and sunlight streamed through the slats, catching dust motes like tiny stars. Lena stood by a stack of crates, her auburn hair loose, her leather jacket slung over a beam. She didn't say a word at first, just looked at me with those piercing green eyes, like she could see every secret I'd ever buried. "Riley," she said finally, her voice low. "You ever feel like you're running from something, but you don't know what?" I froze. No one had ever asked me that. Not my mom, not my ex-girlfriend in Boston, not even myself. I nodded, my throat tight. She stepped closer, her boots scuffing the wooden floor, and I swear the world tilted. "Come with me," she said, gesturing to a ladder leading to the hayloft. My stomach flipped, but I followed, because something about Lena made me want to chase whatever she was offering. Up in the loft, the air was warmer, thicker. Lena sat cross-legged on a blanket she'd spread out, a small wooden box beside her. "I found this in the cabin," she said, opening it to reveal a stack of old letters, yellowed and tied with twine. "They're from the woman who lived here before me. Her name was Clara." Her voice softened, and I caught a flicker of something. Grief, maybe, or longing. She handed me a letter, and as our fingers brushed, my skin burned. The letter was a love note, raw and aching, written by Clara to a woman named Elise. "They were in love," Lena said, her eyes locked on mine. "Back when it wasn't safe to be." I read the words, each one a quiet rebellion against a world that didn't understand. Clara wrote about stolen moments in this very barn, about loving Elise despite the fear, despite the town's whispers. My hands trembled. I'd known I was queer since I was 15, but I'd never seen love like this, fierce, unapologetic, carved into every line. Lena watched me, her gaze steady. "You remind me of her," she said. "Clara, the way you carry your heart like it's too big for this town." I laughed, nervous, trying to deflect. "You don't know me like that, Lena." But she leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't I?" My breath caught. This wasn't just about the letters. This was about us, here now. The barn felt smaller, the world outside fading away. I wanted to ask what she meant, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just sat there, clutching Clara's letter, feeling the weight of Lena's presence like a current pulling me under. The rest of that afternoon blurred. Lena reading more letters, her voice weaving Clara and Elise's story into something alive, something that felt like it was ours too. She told me about her own life, bits and pieces. Growing up in Chicago, leaving home at 18, loving women in a world that didn't always love her back. I listened, hanging on every word, my chest tight with something I couldn't name. When the sun dipped low, painting the loft gold, Lena stood and offered me her hand. "Come back tomorrow," she said. "There's more to this story." I took her hand, and for a moment, I didn't let go. That night, I lay in bed, Clara's letter on my nightstand, Lena's voice in my head. Willow Creek was small, suffocating, full of eyes that judged and tongues that whispered. I'd spent years hiding who I was, dating girls in secret, breaking things off when it got too real. But Lena, she was different. She didn't hide. She didn't apologize. And in that barn, for the first time, I felt like maybe I didn't have to either. The next day, I was back at the farm before noon, my heart pounding like a drum. Lena was waiting, leaning against the barn door, a thermos of coffee in her hand. "You're early," she teased, but her smile was soft, like she'd known I'd come. She led me inside, and this time, there was no box, no letters. Just us, sitting on that same blanket in the loft. "Tell me something real, Riley," she said, her eyes searching mine. "Something you've never told anyone." I swallowed hard. No one had ever asked me to be that vulnerable. I thought of my ex, Sarah, who'd called me too much when I wanted more than casual. I thought of Mom, who loved me but never really saw me. And I thought of myself always running, always scared. "I'm tired of pretending I'm okay with being invisible," I said finally, my voice shaking. "I want to be seen, really seen." Lena didn't say anything at first. She just reached out, her hand resting on mine, warm and steady. "I see you," she said, and those 3 words cracked something open inside me. The barn, the letters, the way her thumb brushed my knuckles. It was too much and not enough all at once. I wanted to lean into her, to close the distance, but fear held me back. What was this? What were we doing? She was my mom's friend, older, wiser, someone who'd lived a life I couldn't even imagine. And yet, in that moment, none of that mattered. "Riley," she said softly, "sometimes the things that scare you most are the ones worth chasing." And then she leaned in, just enough for me to feel the warmth of her breath, and I knew I was already falling. The barn became our sanctuary, a place where the world's rules didn't apply. Every day that week, I found myself back at the McAllister farm, drawn to Lena like a moth to a flame. Each visit felt like stepping into a story that wasn't mine yet, but one I desperately wanted to write. Lena had a way of making the ordinary feel electric. That second day, she brought a thermos of spiked cider, and we sat in the hayloft, passing it back and forth, the warmth spreading through my chest. She read more of Clara and Elisa's letters, her voice wrapping around their words like a melody. One letter described a night they'd danced in the barn, music from a stolen radio crackling through the air, their bodies pressed close in defiance of the world outside. I could almost hear the echo of that music, feel the ghost of their laughter. Lena's eyes met mine as she read, and I wondered if she felt it too. The pull of something bigger than us. "Ever danced like that?" she asked, setting the letter down. I shook my head, my cheeks burning. I'd never been much for dancing, too self-conscious, too afraid of being watched. Lena stood, brushing hay from her jeans, and held out her hand. "Come on, then." My heart raced, but I let her pull me up. There was no music, just the hum of crickets outside. But Lena swayed with me, her hands light on my waist, guiding me in a slow, clumsy circle. I laughed, embarrassed, but she didn't let go. "You're doing fine," she said, her voice soft but firm, like she believed in me more than I did. That moment, her hands, her smile, the way the barn seemed to hold its breath, changed something in me. I'd spent so long hiding, shrinking myself to fit Willow Creek's expectations. But with Lena, I felt bigger, braver, like I could be the version of myself I'd only dreamed of. We danced until the light faded, and when we stopped, breathless, she didn't pull away. Her fingers lingered on my arm, and I wanted to ask what this was, what we were becoming, but the words caught in my throat. The next day, she showed me a photo she'd found tucked in one of the letters. A faded Polaroid of Clara and Elise, arms around each other, standing by the barn's west wall. Clara was tall, with a sharp jaw and a defiant smile. Elise was softer, her eyes bright with something like hope. "They were brave," Lena said, tracing the photo's edges. "Loving each other in a place like this, back then, it wasn't just hard. It was dangerous." I nodded, thinking of my own secrets, The way I dodged questions about my love life. The way I'd let Sarah walk away because I was too scared to fight for us. Lena's life wasn't all mystery, but she shared it in fragments. She told me about her years in San Francisco, working as a mechanic, falling in love with a poet named Mara who broke her heart. "I thought I'd never love again," she said, her voice quiet. "But life has a way of surprising you." Her eyes flicked to mine, and my stomach twisted. Was she talking about me? About us? I wanted to ask, but fear stopped me again. Instead, I told her about Sarah, about how I'd loved her but couldn't handle the weight of being out in a city that felt too big, too exposed. Lena listened, really listened, and when I finished, she said, "You're not that girl anymore, Riley. You're stronger than you think." By the end of the week, the barn wasn't just a place, it was a feeling. It was where I learned that Lena's favorite color was indigo, that she hated mornings but loved stargazing, that she carried a pocket knife engraved with her initials. It was where I admitted I wanted to be a writer, even though I'd never finished a story. And it was where, on the 7th day, she kissed me. It wasn't planned, wasn't some grand moment. We were sitting on the blanket, reading another letter, when she looked at me, her eyes soft and searching. "Riley," she said, and then her lips were on mine, gentle but sure, like she'd been waiting for this as long as I had. My world exploded. Every doubt, every fear, every moment of hiding burned away in that kiss. When we pulled apart, my heart was racing, my hands trembling. "Lena, I started," but she shook her head, smiling. "Don't say anything yet," she said. "Just feel it." And I did. I felt everything, the warmth of her, the weight of the barn, the echo of Clara and Elisa's love still lingering in the air. But even as I leaned into her again, a shadow crept into my mind. What would Mom say? What would this town say? Lena was 16 years older, my mom's friend, a woman who'd seen the world while I was still figuring out my place in it. Could this work? Did I even care? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the kiss, the way her hands felt, the way she'd looked at me like I was enough. But Willow Creek wasn't San Francisco. People here talked. They judged. And Mom, she'd always been open-minded, but would she understand this? I stared at the ceiling, Clara's letters scattered across my desk, and wondered if I was brave enough to write my own story. The kiss changed everything, but it also broke something open. I woke up the next morning with Lena's scent, cedar and leather, still clinging to my skin, my mind a mess of want and worry. Willow Creek wasn't ready for us, and I wasn't sure I was either. I avoided the farm for 2 days, dodging Lena's texts with excuses about helping Mom pack. The truth was I was terrified. I'd spent years building walls around my heart, and Lena had torn them down in a single moment. What if this was a mistake? What if she was just lonely, passing through, and I was just a fleeting distraction? But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Those green eyes, that half smile, the way she'd held me like I was something precious. On the 3rd day, I couldn't stay away. I found Lena in the barn, fixing a broken stall door, her sleeves rolled up, sweat on her brow. She looked up, and for a second I thought she'd be angry. Instead, she smiled, soft and knowing. "Thought you'd ghost me forever," she said, setting down her hammer. I mumbled an apology, but she waved it off. "Talk to me, Riley. What's going on in that head of yours?" I spilled it all. My fear of the town's judgment, my worry about Mom, my own doubts about whether I was enough for someone like her. Lena listened, leaning against the stall, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she stepped closer, her hand brushing my cheek. "You think too much," she said. "This town, your mom, they don't get to decide who you love. Only you do." Her words hit like a punch, but they also felt like freedom. I wanted to kiss her again, to lose myself in her. But instead, I asked, "What happens when people find out?" "Let them," she said, her voice fierce. "I've spent too long hiding, Riley. I'm done with that." She told me about her life in Chicago, about the years she'd spent in the closet, the relationships she'd lost to fear. "I'm not saying it's easy," she said, But it's worth it. You're worth it. My chest ached. No one had ever said that to me before. Not Sarah, not anyone. We spent the rest of the day together. Not in the loft but outside, walking the farm's fields. Lena pointed out constellations as the sky darkened, her voice steady as she named them. I told her about my dream of writing a novel, about the stories I'd started but never finished. She didn't laugh or dismiss it. She just nodded, like she believed I could do it. That night, we kissed again, under a sky full of stars, and it felt like a promise. But promises are fragile in a town like Willow Creek. The next morning, I ran into Mrs. Callahan, the town's biggest gossip, at the general store. She gave me a look that made my skin crawl, like she knew something I didn't. "You've been spending a lot of time with that Hawthorne woman," she said, her voice dripping with suspicion. I brushed it off, but the unease lingered. By noon, Mom called me into the kitchen, her face tight. "Riley, what's going on with you and Lena?" she asked. My stomach dropped. I lied, said we were just friends. But Mom's eyes narrowed. "She's my age, honey. Be careful." I wanted to scream that careful wasn't living, that Lena made me feel alive in a way I never had. But I didn't. I just nodded and left, my heart pounding. That afternoon, I went back to the barn, needing Lena's steadiness. She was there, waiting, but her face was different, tense, guarded. "Your mom called me," she said. "She's worried about you, about us." I felt like the ground was slipping out from under me. "What did you tell her?" I asked, my voice small. "The truth," Lena said. "That I care about you, that I'm not playing games." My breath caught. She'd put herself out there, risked everything while I was still hiding. I wanted to be that brave, but the weight of Willow Creek, of Mom, of my own fears, held me back. "I need time," I said, hating myself for it. Lena nodded, but I saw the hurt in her eyes. "Take all the time you need," she said. "I'll be here." That night, I found another of Clara's letters in the box Lena had given me. It was different, angrier, more desperate. Clara wrote about Elise leaving, about the town's pressure breaking them apart. "I loved her too much to let her stay," Clara wrote. "But letting her go broke me." I read it over and over, tears blurring the words. Was I Clara, too scared to fight? Or was I Elise, running from something real? I didn't know, but I knew I couldn't lose Lena. Not like this. I didn't sleep that night. Clara's words burned in my mind, a warning and a challenge. By morning, I was back at the barn, determined to face Lena and myself. She was there, stacking hay, her movements sharp, like she was working off something heavy. When she saw me, her face softened, but there was a question in her eyes. "I'm sorry," I said, the words spilling out. "I got scared. I'm not used to this, to feeling so much." Lena set down the bale, dusting her hands on her jeans. "It's okay to be scared," she said, "but don't let it stop you from living." We talked for hours, sitting on the barn floor, the world outside forgotten. I told her about my childhood, about the time I came out to Mom and she hugged me but never brought it up again. I told her about Sarah, how I'd pushed her away because I didn't know how to be enough. Lena listened, her hand resting on mine, and then she told me her own story, how she'd lost Mara because she wasn't ready to fight for her, how she'd spent years regretting it. "I'm not letting that happen again," she said, her voice steady. "Not with you." Her words were a lifeline, but they also terrified me. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about the town, about Mom, about the life I'd always known. I wanted Lena, but I didn't know if I was strong enough to face what came with her. That afternoon, we walked to the creek behind the farm, the water glinting in the sunlight. Lena kicked off her boots and waded in, laughing as the cold bit her skin. "Come on, Riley," she called, and I couldn't resist. We splashed like kids, the tension melting away, and when she pulled me close, soaking wet, I kissed her with everything I had. But Willow Creek doesn't let you forget. That evening, Mom was waiting for me at home, her arms crossed. "Riley, we need to talk," she said. My heart sank. She didn't raise her voice, but her words cut deep. Lena's my friend. She's older. She's been through things you can't understand. I don't want you getting hurt. I tried to explain, to tell her how Lena made me feel, but she shook her head. You're young, Riley. You don't know what you want. Her words stung, like she didn't trust me to know my own heart. I left the house, my chest tight, and went back to the barn. Lena was there, reading another of Clara's letters. She looked up, and without a word, she knew. Your mom? She asked. I nodded, tears burning my eyes. Lena pulled me into her arms, and for the first time, I let myself cry. Not just for Mom, but for every moment I'd spent hiding, every piece of myself I'd buried. We'll figure it out, Lena whispered. Together. The next day, I found a new letter in the box. One Elise had written to Clara. It was an apology, a plea for forgiveness. I was scared, Elise wrote, but I never stopped loving you. The words hit me hard. I didn't want to be Elise, running from love because of fear. But I also didn't know how to be Clara, standing firm in a world that wanted to tear her down. Lena and I spent the day in the loft, reading, talking, kissing until the world felt small and manageable. But the weight of Mom's words lingered, and I knew this wasn't over. That night, I overheard Mom on the phone with Lena, her voice sharp. She's my daughter, Lena. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I froze, my heart pounding. Was Mom going to make Lena choose? Was I going to lose her before we even had a chance? I went to bed with Clara's letters in my hands, their story blending with mine, and I knew I had to make a choice. Love or fear. The barn was my refuge, but it couldn't shield me from the storm brewing outside. Mom's words echoed in my head, a warning I couldn't ignore. I loved Lena, but I was starting to see the cost of that love. I met Lena at the farm the next morning, my stomach in knots. She was repairing a fence, her hands steady, but her eyes were tired, like she hadn't slept. Your mom called again, she said, not looking at me. She thinks I'm taking advantage of you. The words hit like a slap. I wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that Lena was the first person who'd ever seen me for who I was. But all I could manage was, what did you say? I told her I love you, Lena said, her voice quiet but firm. My heart stopped. Love. She'd said it, plain and simple, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I wanted to say it back, but fear choked me. Instead, I kissed her, hard and desperate, hoping it would say what I couldn't. We stayed in the barn all day, tangled in each other, Clara and Elisa's letters scattered around us. But even as we kissed, I felt the weight of the world pressing in. That afternoon, the town's whispers reached me. Mrs. Callahan cornered me at the diner, her voice low. People are talking, Riley. You and that woman, you're stirring things up. I wanted to tell her to mind her own business, but the words wouldn't come. I left, my face burning, and went straight to the barn. Lena was there, waiting, but her face was different. Wary, like she knew something was coming. We can't keep hiding, she said. Not if this is real. She was right, but the thought of being out, of facing the town's judgment, made my chest tight. I'd spent so long trying to blend in, to be the good daughter, the quiet girl who didn't make waves. Lena was asking me to be someone else. Someone brave, someone proud. I wanted to be that person, but I didn't know how. The next day, I found another letter, this one from Clara to Elise, written years after they'd parted. I built a life without you, Clara wrote, but it's not the one I wanted. The words broke me. I didn't want to look back in 20 years and regret letting Lena go. But Mom was leaving for Seattle in a week, and I knew she'd try to take me with her. To save me from Lena, I had to decide, stay and fight for this or run like I always had. That night, Lena took me to the creek again, the water cold against our skin. We didn't talk much, just held each other. The stars above us bright and unyielding. I'll fight for you, Lena said, her voice steady. But you have to fight too. I nodded, tears in my eyes, and kissed her, knowing it was a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. The next morning, Mom was waiting for me in the kitchen, her bags packed. "We're leaving tomorrow," she said. "You're coming with me." My heart sank. I tried to argue, to tell her I needed to stay, but she cut me off. "This isn't about Lena," she said. "It's about you. You're not ready for this." But she was wrong. I was ready, I just didn't know how to prove it. Mom's ultimatum hung over me like a storm cloud. Seattle was her fresh start, but it felt like a cage. I needed Lena, needed the barn, needed the person I was becoming with her. I found Lena at the farm, her face tight with worry. "Your mom told me you're leaving," she said, her voice breaking. "Is that what you want?" I shook my head, tears spilling over. "I want you," I said, the words finally free. "I love you." It was the first time I'd said it, and it felt like jumping off a cliff. Lena pulled me into her arms, her lips on mine, and for a moment, the world was just us. But reality crashed in fast. That afternoon, I went home to find Mom packing my things. "This is for your own good," she said, her voice firm but shaky. I wanted to scream, to tell her she didn't get to decide my life. But instead, I grabbed Clara's letters and ran back to the barn. Lena was there, waiting, and I poured out everything. Mom's plans, my fear, my love for her. She listened, her hand steady on mine, and then she said, "You have to talk to her, Riley. Not for me, for you." I knew she was right, but the thought of confronting Mom terrified me. I'd spent my life trying to make her happy, to be the daughter she wanted. But Lena made me want more, for myself, for us. That night, we stayed in the barn, reading the last of Clara and Elise's letters. They'd found a way to be together years later in a different town, a different time. "They didn't give up," Lena said, her voice soft. "Neither should we." The next morning, I faced Mom. "I'm not going," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "I love Lena, and I'm staying." Mom's face crumpled, a mix of anger and pain. "She's too old for you," she said. "She's using you." I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "She sees me, Mom, more than you ever have." The words hurt her, I could see it, but they were true. For the first time, I was choosing myself. Mom left for Seattle the next day, alone. I stayed in Willow Creek, in the farmhouse, with Lena's number on speed dial. The town's whispers grew louder. Mrs. Callahan, the diner crowd, even some old high school friends. But Lena was there, her hand in mine, her laugh cutting through the noise. We spent every day in the barn, planning a future that felt impossible but real. I started writing again, inspired by Clara and Elise, by Lena, by the love I was finally letting myself feel. Mom's absence left a hole, but Lena filled it with light. The barn was our world now, a place where we could be us without apology. But Willow Creek wasn't done with us yet. The first week without Mom was strange. Quiet, but freeing. I moved into the cabin with Lena, her small space cluttered with books and tools, a life I wanted to be part of. We spent our days fixing up the farm, our nights in the loft, talking about everything and nothing. Lena taught me how to change a tire, how to cook her mom's old chili recipe, how to love without fear. I started writing a novel, inspired by Clara and Elise, pouring my heart into every word. But the town's judgment was relentless. At the diner, people stared. At the gas station, they whispered. One night, someone spray-painted "Sinner" on the barn door. Lena scrubbed it off, her jaw tight, but I saw the pain in her eyes. "This is what I was afraid of," I told her, my voice shaking. She took my hand, her grip firm. "They don't get to win," she said. "Not unless we let them." We decided to fight back, not with anger, but with truth. Lena suggested hosting an open mic night at the farm, a chance for the town to see us, to hear our story. I was terrified, but I agreed. We spread the word, and to my surprise, people showed up. Kids from my old high school, farmers, even Mrs. Callahan, her face sour but curious. I read from my novel, my voice shaking as I told Clara and Elise's story, weaving it with ours. Lena stood beside me, her hand on my back, and when I finished, the crowd was quiet. Then they clapped, not all of them, but enough. That night, we kissed in the loft, the applause still ringing in my ears. You were incredible, Lena said, her eyes shining. I felt it, pride, love, the kind of strength I'd never known I had. But the victory was short-lived. The next morning, we found the barn's windows smashed, glass glittering in the grass. Lena's face was grim, but she didn't flinch. We keep going, she said, and we did. The broken windows were a blow, but Lena's strength kept me grounded. We boarded them up, our hands working in sync, but the town's hatred was a weight I couldn't ignore. I started to wonder if love was enough. Lena and I spent the next week repairing the barn, painting over the scars, making it ours again. We laughed, we kissed, we planned more events, a book club, a poetry night, anything to show Willow Creek we weren't going anywhere. But the whispers didn't stop. At the grocery store, I overheard two women talking about that couple ruining the town's values. I wanted to confront them, but Lena's voice echoed in my head. They don't get to win. One night, Lena took me to the loft with a surprise, a small radio, like the one Clara and Elise had used. She turned it on and soft jazz filled the air. Dance with me, she said, pulling me close. We swayed, the world melting away, and for a moment, I believed we could outlast anything. But then the phone rang, Mom, calling from Seattle. Riley, come out here, she said. This isn't you. That town, that woman, they're holding you back. I hung up, tears streaming down my face, and Lena held me as I cried. The next day, we found another letter, hidden in the barn's rafters. It was from Elise, written years after she'd left Clara. I came back, she wrote, but you were gone. The words broke my heart. I didn't want that to be us. I told Lena about Mom's call, about the doubt creeping in. She listened, her face calm but pained. If you need to go, I won't stop you, she said. But I'm not giving up on us. I didn't want to give up either, but the pressure was crushing. The town, Mom, my own fears, they were all screaming at me to run. That night, I dreamed of Clara and Elise, dancing in the barn, their love a light that refused to die. I woke up knowing what I had to do. I couldn't run anymore. Lena was my home, and I was done letting fear decide my future. But Willow Creek wasn't going to make it easy. The next morning, I called Mom. I'm staying, I said, my voice steady. I love Lena, and I'm not ashamed of it. There was a long silence, then a sigh. I just want you to be happy, she said finally. But I'm scared for you. I told her I was scared too, but for the first time I wasn't letting it stop me. When I hung up, I felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight I'd carried for years. Lena and I threw ourselves into the farm, turning it into a haven. We started a community garden, inviting anyone who wanted to join. Some did, kids, old farmers, even a few curious neighbors. Others stayed away, their whispers louder than ever. But we kept going, building something stronger than their hate. I kept writing, my novel taking shape, Lena reading every page with a smile that made my heart soar. One night, we found a final letter, tucked in a crack in the barn's wall. It was from Clara, written on her deathbed. I loved you every day, she wrote to Elise, even when we were apart. I cried not just for them, but for us, for the love we were fighting for. Lena held me, her arms steady, and I knew this was worth it. But the town struck again. A petition circulated, calling for the farm to be shut down, claiming we were corrupting the community. Lena laughed it off, but I saw the worry in her eyes. We went to the town meeting, hand in hand, and faced the crowd. I spoke, my voice shaking but clear, telling them about Clara and Elise, about love that outlasts hate. Some listened, some didn't, but we walked out together, unbroken. The petition failed, but it left scars. Lena and I knew Willow Creek would never fully accept us, but we'd built something stronger, a love that could weather anything. We turned the barn into a community space, hosting open mics, book clubs, even a small pride event. People came, not just from Willow Creek but from neighboring towns, drawn by the story of Clara and Elise, by the love we weren't afraid to show. My novel was published a year later, dedicated to Lena, to Clara, to every woman who'd ever loved against the odds. It wasn't a bestseller, but it was mine, and it was enough. Mom visited that spring, her eyes softer now. She hugged Lena, then me, and whispered, "I'm proud of you." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Lena and I moved into a bigger cabin, our lives intertwined, our love a quiet rebellion against a world that tried to break us. One night, we sat in the loft, the radio playing softly, Clara and Elisa's letters in a box beside us. "We did it," Lena said, her hand in mine. "We're still here." I kissed her, the barn glowing around us, and knew this was the ending I'd been searching for. Not perfect, but real and ours.